Hello and welcome to Coffee with Craig. I am Craig. This is my coffee, and you are my welcome guest. I'd like to ask if you could do me a quick favor. Please, first of all, like this live feed, but also please share this live feed right now so that folks, all of your friends, all of your Facebook friends, can join in on the conversation as it is occurring. So today, we're going to talk about the study of gun violence. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Center for Disease Control and their study, or rather the lack thereof, of firearms and firearms prevention. Firearms gun violence prevention. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar, the CDC is one of the first public health agencies to actually start to study the issue of gun violence. What started to happen at the time, though, was that the CDC started to not just study it, but they started to actually advocate for gun control. So, as a part of that, a supporter of the Second Amendment chose to include an amendment in the appropriations bill for the CDC, which specifically stated that none of the funds that were provided to the CDC for injury prevention may be used to advocate for gun control. Sounds simple enough, right? Didn't take away any ability of them to be able to research it. It simply said you can't use this money to advocate for gun control. Well, needless to say, they stopped studying gun violence, or at least for the most part, they stopped studying gun violence. They still collect some data, and every once in a while we'll put out a study or something like that. But for the most part, they don't spend a lot of time, or at least as much time, researching it. And you can tell because when you look at their budget, which is over $11 billion for research, they invest almost none of it in the prevention in the area of gun violence or gun violence prevention. Why? Because they can't advocate. Well, in order to, quote unquote, increase the amount of funding that the CDC has for gun violence, to study gun violence, a group of Democrats has launched an effort in order to help fund CDC gun research. Now, the problem is that for some reason they seem to think that they're not allowed to do it. They seem to think that that's not available. In fact, in the letter that these folks actually got together, and they actually wound up putting together a letter. And this letter is signed by, once again, 121 Democratic members of the House. This is what they said in their letter. As you are aware, inclusion of the Dickey Amendment has, in practice, prevented the CDC from conducting publicly funded scientific research on the causes of gun violence or its effects on public health. This research is consistent with other non-disease-related research conducted by the CDC, such as research on drowning prevention, intimate partner violence, and motor vehicle injuries. Now, once again, the fundamental problem behind this is that there's this belief that the Dickey Amendment has in essence, made it so that the CDC cannot do any research. But one doesn't have to look very far in order to find an article that was done by, of all entities, The Trace, and was published in The Atlantic, which noted that it's not that they can't do research, it's that they won't do gun violence research. Here's what a couple of quotes from the article. Here he pointed out to me. This is when. Let's go to the next one. Here we go. It is the leadership of the CDC who stopped the agency from doing gun violence research. Mark Rosenberg, founder of the CDC's National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, the division of the agency responsible for its work on this subject, tells The Trace. Right now, there's nothing stopping them from addressing this life and death problem. So says he. Here's someone else who basically notes that even without changing the amendment, the CDC could do a lot more in the area of firearms research, says Michael Siegel, a public health scientist from Boston University. And then back to that first quote that came up. He pointed out to me, wait a minute, Mark, Congress and the NRA didn't stop the CDC from doing gun violence research. The CDC stopped itself. See, what it comes down to is this, is in areas where, because they look at this as a public health thing, they are like, look, okay, this is a disease. We would advocate against a disease. We would advocate against AIDS. We would advocate against hepatitis. We would advocate against the common cold. So why shouldn't we advocate against guns? Now you see it. They don't want to advocate against gun violence. They want to advocate against guns. They want to specifically advocate against the individual, constitutionally enumerated civil right that is known as the Second Amendment, which allows us to keep and bear arms, or which basically states that we have a fundamental right to keep and bear arms. See, that's the thing. That's the thing that none of these Democrats, and I'm telling you, none of them will ever admit it, because most of them have never, ever read the Dickey Amendment. I've had to read it to legislators in committee, and they still flat out act as if it doesn't exist, as if they have absolutely no idea. Why? Because they live in an altered reality where gun violence is something that's perpetrated by guns. It's not perpetrated by bad people. It's not perpetrated by terrorists. It's not perpetrated by criminals. It's not perpetrated by gang members. It's not perpetrated by people who buy and sell drugs. It's perpetrated by guns. Guns themselves are what constitute or what perpetrate the violence. And so therefore they want to study it like guns are a virus. And if we can eliminate the individual right to own a firearm, then maybe we will eliminate gun violence. The problem is that hasn't happened anywhere else. You look in every area in this nation where they have the strictest gun laws, and guess what? You have the highest rates of gun violence because it's not a disease, right? Let's just understand this. If you really want to understand this, you have to understand human behavior. And human behavior is not a disease. It's not a disease unless you're a liberal. That is kind of a mental disorder. But it's not. We're not talking about a disease here. We're talking about understanding what causes violence. Firearms are the tool. They are the tool, nothing more. They are not the cause. But if we start talking about dealing with the cause, well, then we might start hitting a few soft spots. We might start hitting in some places where they start to realize that maybe, just maybe, some of the people that they need to be dealing with, some of the issues they need to be addressing, are caused by them and their policies. But that hits a little too close to home. So let's try and take away the rights of all Americans. Let's try and take away their civil rights so that we can feel safe, not actually be safe. I know. You're shaking your head just as I am. That's okay. That just means that you still have a little bit of common sense left, which, by the way, is not all that common anymore. At least not in the Democratic Party. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos. Invite people to like our Facebook page, Firearms Policy Coalition. This is the home in the fight for civil rights. We understand one thing. If you don't use them, you're going to lose them. You guys take care. Stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.